more information on that stone that he left out of the video. This pyramid-shaped stone, dead center in the middle of an approximately 300-year-old tree, has some crazy connections to the Great Pyramid of Giza. On June 29, 2022, an operator in tree service was on his lunch break and fooling around with his crew, noticed this stone sticking out of a tree. They began digging in, and what they found is absolutely incredible. After coming across the TikTok video myself, I reached out to Tim to ask for some pictures, in the off case that it was some Norse runes. I always think it's Norse runes. And Tim sent me back these images. After a quick Google image search, downed it when it came back with this image of Egyptian Coptic text. After reaching out to Tim to do some quick little measurements, we discovered that the exposed corner of the pyramid points due south, which led me to believe that the other three corners pointed in the other true direction. After asking his employee Steve to take a measurement from the bottom of the pyramid to the tip of it running up the spine, we discovered that it was 54 inches in length or 137 centimeters. The Great Pyramid in Egypt's 137 meters. Using a quick Google map search, its location next to the Gilkey Creek, which by the way also flows north just like the Nile, was approximately 3,000 feet or around 9 meters. The Pyramid of Giza is 9 kilometers from the Nile River. When representative of the city of Flint, Michigan came out, they said it was most likely a mile mark. What the hell are they drinking in that water? Oh yeah, that's right. Tim, being an expert on trees, estimates that the tree is 300 years old. The city of Flint was founded in 1819. Also, no history in this country of pyramid-shaped mile markers. It could have just been a settler that had an affinity for Egyptian culture and understood Coptic language, except the Rosetta Stone wasn't discovered till 1799. Some more investigation and maybe some help from some archaeology friends, and we can find out what the hell's going on in Flint, Michigan with this incredible and sensational find.
What is going on? We got another creepy and scary TikTok reaction video. If you haven't already, smash that like button, because what we like to do on these Dark Waters 9s is dive into the creepiest and scariest videos we can find. So make sure to keep your head on a straight swivel. This video is for entertainment purposes only.
This, y'all, a gigantic warm spot has been spotted through satellite pictures in Lake Michigan. Look how big that is. Look, first of all, look at this right here, y'all. It looks like there is something coming out of it. Look at that. It looks like land is rising, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the South Antarctic anomaly again, something like that. But you guys know the story or the history of Lake Michigan, right? Right? The nickname for Lake Michigan is Lake Michigan Graveyard. Did you know that there are over 10,000 boats and vessels and over 30,000 people that have been caught drowning in Lake Michigan? Did you guys know that? They call it Lake Michigan Graveyard. Not only that, but as of recently, look, Atlantis under a Michigan lake, they found a prehistoric structure in Lake Michigan, you guys. They are calling it Stonehenge because they don't want to throw people off. But look, to create structures like Egyptian pyramids or British Stonehenge. The definition of Stonehenge is literally a prehistoric megalithic structure. You know what I'm saying? So that could be anything, a big rock. But what they are saying is they just found a pyramid under Lake Michigan. Now, I don't know how true this is, y'all, but take a listen to this.
Have you heard that a gigantic pyramid just popped up from nowhere under the Lake Michigan and scientists saw something terrifying inside? No way. Yo, check this out. Just last week, a bunch of researchers from Detroit decided to dive deep to explore what's under the lake. Little did they know, they were about to hit the jackpot of weird. They gear up, and as they're sinking deeper, they start hearing these bizarre noises no one's heard before, even though they've traveled around these parts loads of times. Oh, yeah. They shrugged it off and kept going. But then, bam. Out of the blue, they spot this massive structure chilling in the distance. So the crew hops out for a closer look, running tests on the thing, and here's the kicker. The material itself doesn't match anything on our planet. Oh my God. It's like some alien architect swung by and left us a little souvenir. They're all freaking out because, hello, this is uncharted territory.
Now, again, I don't know how true this is because they do things behind our back and they don't tell us anything, you guys. Remember, they just leave us in the dark. But it says more confusion has been added to this long-standing mystery with the discovery of an enigmatic prehistoric structure beneath the U.S. Lake Michigan. So they're probably finding a whole bunch of things down there, and they're not telling us about anything because they want to keep us in the dark. They don't want us to know what's really happening around the world, y'all. But this right here is something to look into because there's changing happening all over our planet, and this right here is a big deal. Not just because of what Lake Michigan is known for, but what is coming out of that lake. What is coming out of that lake? This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only. I am only raising awareness to interesting situations during these interesting times. Let me.
This is the first time I've heard about anything interesting going on in Lake Michigan. There's some people that speculate that every single lake is man-made. That's something to think about. And if you guys have any information on the technology used to make every single lake, I'd love to hear it. I've came across one video, and I can't find it anymore, about people using some type of frequency vibration machine to sprout water. So could it be possible if to have a big enough structure dug out and to use the right vibrational frequency, the same ones they use to make the star forts? I don't know.
We're downtown Flint. Downtown. So check this out. That tree is clearly 300 years old. Probably 200. But look at what we found inside. What is this? I got some markings on it, but I don't know. That ain't natural. Anybody got any thoughts? Let us know. Leave some comments. Very curious, and we're very interested. Because Flint was founded in 1807. You know, so how old is that thing? This thing's pretty big. It goes down pretty far.
If you ask me, we got to dig that thing up on out of there. We need a full archaeological excavation. Anybody in Flint got any information on this pyramid? Well, love to hear it. Drop it in the comments below.
Did you know about the Stonehenge that's at the bottom of Lake Michigan? It's located in a similar area to the underwater crucifix that we talked about in a previous video. It's just outside of Traverse City, but the actual location has not been released because it's considered an archaeological site. The majority of this Stonehenge appears to be this long line of rocks that have been intentionally placed. It's over a mile long. But there is a circular rock formation, and they discovered a rock that appears to have a mastodon carved on it, which is an animal that roamed North America 10,000 years ago. So remember that the Great Lakes were formed from this glacier advancing and receding. The process didn't happen overnight. It took thousands of years. So there's parts of Lake Michigan that we know today that would have been dry land. The site really needs further investigation, but experts can't get down to the location because most of them aren't divers. This wouldn't be totally out of place in Michigan. There's other sites that are also 10,000 years old. There's a cool discovery video on it. Did you know about the Stonehenge that's at the bottom of Lake Michigan?
They're hiding a whole Stonehenge at the bottom of Lake Michigan. People were living at one time at the bottom of Lake Michigan. That means there was no water there once. Do you guys hear me? There was no water where Lake Michigan was, if there is a Stonehenge. So watch this. If you think Stonehenge was crazy at the bottom of Lake Michigan, watch this. You really gonna be tripping.
1570 and no Great Lakes, but we do have Chilaga, which present day is Chicago. No doubt it sits on Lake Michigan, a huge fresh body water. But Chilaga, it is not sitting on Lake Michigan because Lake Michigan is not there yet. Chicago is Chilaga. If it sat on a lake of any kind of prominence, they would have notated it. They notated the city, Chilago, so how are you not going to recognize the lake that it sits on.
This means Lake Michigan. I know this sounds crazy, but this means Lake Michigan was created 200 years ago. Hey, all we do is gather the data on these dark waters, man. That's all we do. Your thoughts below.
You would get ridiculed by the entire town, and your map would not be accepted, because if you cannot have enough knowledge to notate that a town sits on a sizable lake, your map is no good. That is why this map was accepted back then, because back then there was no Lake Michigan, only Chilaga. 1570.
My fault. Over 500 years ago. My fault. 500 years ago. There was no Lake Michigan? What? Could it be possible they had the technology to create lakes? What is going on? You know we gotta dive into this. Shilaga? We gotta write this down. Man. I believe this it has validity. Because in the 1500s, they were all using airships. That's how they're able to make these maps so good. So the fact that they don't even have the Mississippi yet, if you really want to dive off into it, you don't even see the Mississippi on here, man. What is going on?
This is Chilaga, aka Chicago. These buildings were here before colonization. These are the real Tartarian buildings. We know the truth now. This is
1570.
The Windy City, Chicago, and most of America is a lot older than you've been told. Before us inheritors founded this new world after the last reset, it went by a different name. See in all these old maps, Shilaga. Going as far back as the 15th century, you'll see where Chicago used to be, Shilaga. Like I said, America is a lot older than you've been told. It's mapped from 1492, not just predominantly showing Shilaga, but also many other cities. Castles and towns represented all up and down the new lands, long before America was a thing. Now, what was really the purpose behind all these great fires, all in the 1800s around the same time? Great fires that spared trees here, but yet completely demolish stone and brick structures. It was all about the destruction of the old world, the destruction of Shilaga. Standing right next to the unburned utility pole, you see that nice Freemason coat gesture here. And you tell me what kind of fire leaves stone in absolute rubble with no signs of scorching, and trees, utility poles here, untouched. And of course, the ever-present whited out skies in all of these photos. History is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. And it's been going on for quite some time.
Whoever won the battle back in the day, they got to write history. So they trying to play the fire narrative, get rid of all these ancient structures, and that's why they're whiting out all the skies. For all we know, there could be airship civilizations. They could have an airship station where people are living. They don't come down but once a year, if you ask me.
Our parents, our grandparents, even our great-grandparents has all been told those set of lies agreed upon. Let's break that cycle. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
Raised afoot because of swampland flooding. They tell us that they built a tunnel under the Chicago River. They tell us that there was a great fire, yet when we look at the old pictures of Chicago, it looks like a bomb went off. They tell us that Chicago's World Fair was built in less than 3 years. Even if this was done with plaster, this would have been a massive undertaking. Just look at these structures. Does this look temporary to you? The purpose of these fairs were to indoctrinate, and I wouldn't be surprised if people began asking questions. I mean, look at Dr. Charles. He obviously was curious to Chicago's ancient origins, since it has been depicted in maps, and they were probably curious about who built all these structures, and so maybe the officials decided that they had to get rid of it, so they destroyed everything. These structures were not built in the 1800s. Chicago was an old world Tartarian city. It's even on Mercator's map from 1569, so why when you look up Shilaga does it say that it's only on a map in 1605? Very strange, right? And on the Mercator's map there's a series of texts with Latin legends that actually talk about Tartaria. He mentions the Tartars almost 20 times on this map, and it's possible that they're the actual source for where Mercator actually got his info. He talks about a King John who had taken over the country of Tartaria, and basically in order to quell rebellion, he decided to disperse them into different countries, breaking their power of rebellion. But the Tartars were unwilling to give up their kinship, and of mutual association, they made a vow and fled to the northward where they seized a very vast country. So Mercator was well aware of the Tartarians, and if they had complete control of the east, it's not that far of a stretch to assume that they would attempt to pass the Bering Strait. If we look at Arzareth, which is the land beyond the Great River, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of restoration, Arzareth was clearly in Tartaria, right by the Bering Strait. The Tartarians, then trying to flee whatever king or parasites were trying to take over, they raised afoot because of swampland flooding.
Oh, we need the whole story. We got to get the whole story of this. Hold on.
We're taught that Chicago was built in the 1800s, but there's so much with that narrative that doesn't add up that it leads us to believe that there's something that was left out of the official history books. In 1605, a map published in Venice shows North America with many old world cities. Notice that the symbol to represent these cities is sometimes...
Hold on. Could the Florida Keys have more than what they have actually going on? Like, could the land of Mew be over here somewhere, man? They trying to cover up so much. Could the land of Mew be right over here, man? They trying to cover up so much. We don't even see the Mississippi. Man, what is this land right here? This is damn near into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. So whatever's, if you go directly into the middle of the Gulf, I guarantee you there's some type of significance right there. Man, I believe this map is accurate. And they used airships to accurately make these mountains and everything. I believe this is accurate for entertainment purposes only.
some type of red castle. Supposedly at the time that this was written, there was no English-speaking settlements on the North American continent. In the middle of the continent, past the end of the St. Lawrence River, appears the name Shilaga. And we can see this in a variety of different maps. It's right in the exact same place that Chicago would appear, and obviously, the name is extremely close. In 1894, the Chicago Tribune actually mentioned Shilaga being on a map from 1615. Chicago or Shilaga on an old map. Quote, President Harper of the University of Chicago has lately received a quaint map of the world. This map was presented to President Harper by Dr. Charles Richter, the Imperial German Representative Commissioner to the World's Fair. Now isn't that interesting? It continues, the following letter of presentation accompanies the map. Quote, W.R. Harper, President of the University of Chicago, Dear Sir, when during the early preparatory stages of the exposition work efforts were made mainly upon the investigation of Mr. Curtis to collect maps, supposition be correct, it is most likely on this map the name of Chicago in its original form appears for the first time. Quote, Herr Professor Graf of Dresden, who has taken a prominent interest in the researches to which the Chicago Exposition and the historic events underlying its existence have given so powerful an impulse, has upon a request arranged for a photographic reproduction of the maps in question. And as the representative of this commission and on behalf of Herr Professor Graf, I have the honor to request you to accept a copy of the same with the request that you give it an appropriate place in your university. And with the hope, also, that it will measure. Okay, so Dr. Charles Richter was the Imperial German Representative Commissioner to the World's Fair, and it seems that he was trying to write to the university professor and attempt to speak about Shalaga appearing on old maps, and he even alludes to it having a connection with Germany. Obviously, there was some interest by people who knew not of the origins of the World Fairs into Chicago's ancient origins. But this is kind of where it gets even crazier. The newspaper actually had a follow-up 6 days later where they attempt to cover this whole thing up. Let's remember now that we understand the orphan asylums and that most of these people, especially the journalists and the German migrants, they wouldn't know the full history of this city. That knowledge would only be known by the secret orders who own the buildings and perhaps some higher-ups at these colleges. Now the headline of the newspaper reads, Shalaga is not the same as Chicago. Someone named C.F. Gunther writes in and says, quote, In the Tribune of Sunday, there appeared a map lately sent to President Harper of the University by Dr. Charles Richter, Imperial German Representative Commissioner, which is supposed to represent the oldest appearance of the name of Chicago, namely 1615. As no one questions this assumption, I am frank to say that it is unquestionably an error in every respect. It is not true that the so-called Shalaga on this map is at the exact point where the marvelous city is now located, but on the contrary, the country is marked Mexicana. Again, the so-called St. Lawrence River is not so far south. This river was well known at the time and should be at the top of the map. Hence, this is also a far-fetched assumption. It is self-evident that no one would put Chicago to have taken. End quote. Okay, so Chicago on a river running up in Mexico, for Chicago, situated on a chain of lakes nearly 1,000 miles long, omitting these lakes entirely and place it on a river going into Mexico. He continues trying to prove this Mexico argument and that Shalaga is actually spelled Shalapa. Now, this makes it very obvious that they didn't want this to be looked into at all, because the truth is, Shalaga is not spelled Shalapa, and it's on several maps in the 1500s. Many of the maps that show Shalaga closer south have been distorted, as with the German plate, but there are maps that show it in its correct position. Also, just because the map said Mexicana doesn't mean anything. In fact, Mexicana is said to have been all of California, Florida, Nova France, Norumbega, Quivira, and many more. It wasn't literally just in Mexico. And it's very strange that someone at the university actually said this and ignored that Shalaga is actually accurately placed on Mercator's maps.
I agree. Saying Shalaga is tied to anything Mexicana is a reach because Chicago is accurately put up in the northeast.
So,
and it sounds just like Chicago.
Obviously some type of cover-up going on. Also, another argument made is that Hochelaga appears on several maps, and that Shalaga is some corruption of that, but I think Hochelaga must have been some type of smaller settlement made around the ruins of Shalaga, possibly by cannibalistic tribes as mentioned in many books around this time. But this got me looking into the University of Chicago, and just take a look at this building, which was also graciously funded by John D. Rockefeller. So yeah, it's another castle, but just think about it. Why would the college try to cover up Shalaga? Well, it's because the officials, or those who were in control of Chicago at the time, were secret society orphans who had repopulated the city and educated the population. By this time in 1890, most of Chicago's population was transported in, and the people had no clue who—
Whoa, let's hold the phone. Did he say it repopulated? Like the Cabbage Patch Kids incubator? That's tight. That's starting to make sense now. Hold on, let's hear that again.
About it. Why would the college try to cover up Shalaga? Well, it's because the officials, or those who were in control of Chicago at the time, were secret society orphans who had repopulated the city and educated the population. By this time in 1890, most of Chicago's population was transported in, and the people had no clue who actually built these structures. Just look at the University of Chicago's emblem in 1890. Looks like we have a griffin in flames. Maybe they're trying to tell us something? They tell us that Chicago was raised afoot because of swampland flooding. King or parasites were trying to take over. They crossed into America and began creating cities, one of them being Shalaga. In America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, we actually have a paragraph that speaks of this exact situation. Quote, "The other Tartary, which certainly was the first nursery, from hence the Americans were transplanted. Tartary, or Tatary, so called from the river Tatar, which runs through the country Mongol into the..."
Americans transplanted. What? I keep thinking about that Cabbage Patch incubators when they saying stuff like that, man.
From hence the Americans were transplanted. Tartary, or Tatary, so called from the river Tatar, which runs through the country Mongol into the Northern Ocean, covers a great part of the terrestrial globe. The Lesser Tartary makes out a considerable part of Europe. The greater is Asia. Now we must inquire from what Tartars the Americans extracted. Mornius, Postellus, Jean-Bardus, Poteris, and others are of the opinion that the Tartars, which about the year 1228, under the command of Zingis Khan, overspread the earth like a deluge, where the successors to the 10 tribes of Israel, which were carried into captivity to Assyria by Salmanazar, the Tartary, or rather Tartaria, seems to be some testimony thereof, because it signifies in the Syrian or Hebrew tongue remnants or remainders, as seemingly because these Tartarians were remainders of the forementioned tribes. End quote. So you tell me, what do you think?
That gives more validity to the Moorish Tartarians. That's just the data, man. I'm just going by the data I'm getting on these waters. They're mentioning the Moorish Tartarians making everything back in the day. This just is another check mark that adds more validity to that. I'm just going strictly off the data we're getting on these waters. But that was fascinating. That was huge information. They're literally telling you what just happened. How did Tartaria get, or Shalaga got created? I'm gonna replay this, man. I want to hear it again. I have to digest this. I'm literally trying to put together the pieces on this Dark Waters. That's what we do. We try to find some type of truth from the context clues and try to do some type of cross-reference to get some type of validity here. That's what we're doing. So please forgive me if I play a video twice. You know, that's what we do on these waters. I apologize. But this is important.
Crossed into America and began creating cities, one of them being Shalaga. In America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, we actually have a paragraph that speaks of this exact situation. Quote, "The other Tartary, which certainly was the first nursery, from hence the Americans were transplanted. Tartary, or Tatary, so called from the river Tatar, which runs through the country Mongol into the Northern Ocean, covers a great part of the terrestrial globe. The Lesser Tartary makes out a considerable part of Europe. The greater is Asia. Now we must inquire from what Tartars the Americans extracted. Mornius, Postellus, Jean-Bardus, Poteris, and others are of the opinion that the Tartars, which about the year 1228, under the command of Zingis Khan..."
Zingis Khan. Who does that sound like? That sound like Genghis Khan. You know, on Mulan, that evil dude on Mulan that they were fighting, Genghis Khan. You know, and this adds more validity to the Great Wall of Tartary. They're saying that's not the Great Wall of China. That's the Great Wall of Tartary. They was trying to keep mugs out from invading China. This is deep, man. These waters.
Overspread the earth like a deluge.
And this is in 1228 that they said this. I don't know exactly when the flood or reset happened, but this is giving us a lot of truth, I believe, from what I'm got going on, you know. Your guys' thoughts below. Tell me what you guys think. But this is Shalaga, Chicago. They are trying to hide something. All these fires that they're trying to create, man. They're definitely trying to hide the history, man. Give them another 200 years. There ain't gonna be no more ancient structures for, everyone to go visit. There ain't gonna be no more. They're gonna have to go by these photos. And they're not gonna be able to tell if the photos are real or not, because you see how AI's jumping in on the scene. You can't, Mugs ain't gonna believe us in a couple hundred years from now saying, oh, look at these ancient structures. Oh yeah, right. We didn't build those.
Where the successors to the 10 tribes of Israel, which were carried into captivity to Assyria by Salmanazar, the Tartary, or rather Tartaria, seems to be some testimony thereof, because it signifies in the Syrian or Hebrew tongue remnants or remainders, as seemingly because these Tartarians were remainders of the forementioned tribes. End quote. So you tell me, what do you think? Is Chicago the ancient mythical city of Shalaga? If we connect this with the Chicago World Fair, then it actually starts to make a lot more sense. Do you guys have any finds to share on Shalaga? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Stay curious, and all we can hope is that our minds will be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?
Man, they lying about everything. This is from Old War Stories, and it looks like it was created by Mind Unveiled. We're gonna be diving on this all week. So yeah, shout out to them for making that. We're gonna be on this all week, y'all.
You $5 that there is a German World War I U-boat sitting at the bottom of Lake Michigan. If you bet against me, you owe me $5. Why is a German World War I U-boat sitting at the bottom of Lake Michigan? I'll tell you. So after the war, the U.S. took about 6 U-boats and they dragged them around the country parading them to make money and sell tours of them to people. So this went from New York and then went all down the coast and then up finally through the locks to Chicago. And that's where it made its final voyage. They finished up their tours, stripped the ship of everything, and they were like, all right, we're going to use this U-boat as target practice. They dragged it out into the middle of the lake and then blew it up, and it sank. And that was the last time anyone saw it for 70 years, until 1992 when a company finally discovered the wreck, called A&T, and they've just been gatekeeping the location and haven't told anyone since, and no one's found it still. So yeah, you can go out and try to find a World War I German U-boat that's sitting at the bottom of Lake Michigan. It's pretty cool. Say that I bet you $5.
They don't know we on these submersibles, man. We gonna find that U-boat. And what they might be saying happened might really not have been what taken place. I'm not going to say exactly what and when, but it could be a whole completely different narrative to what they have presented us. Remember, the victors get to write his story. History. It's his story.
A massive pyramid has just appeared out of nowhere under Lake Michigan, and scientists saw something terrifying inside. A week ago, a group of divers were diving in the lake for fun when they saw something strange in the distance. They spotted a light of some sort which they have never seen before deep beneath the lake. They got worried, so they alerted authorities and made their way home eventually. Once scientists arrived, they got their equipment ready and made their way down to see what they could find. They made their way towards the mysterious light, and moments later they saw it. The light was being emitted from a pyramid of some sort. The team was in disbelief, as no structures were ever reported to be under the Michigan Lake. When they got closer to the pyramid, they began hearing very strange and powerful sounds, unlike anything that they've ever heard before. The group carefully made their way inside, and this is when they saw it. One of the men spotted something moving in the dark, so they pointed their flashlights at it, An enormous eel creature was staring straight into their souls. It had massive teeth and was nearly 70 feet in length. The scientists got terrified, and they immediately got out of there.
Y'all, we gonna be on these. We gonna be on these all week, man. I'm gonna try to drop more of these shorter boys out for you. If you made it this far and you love this video, some words of encouragement, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We might be going live later on today. So, hey, I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.